think we are live. Um, yeah, so hello everybody who is slowly joining. I can see some familiar faces here, and thank you for joining us. And I'm here with Shane Littrell, and I will introduce my guest in a little bit, and also myself. So I'm Anna from Substack, writing neuroscience and psychotherapy. And today, my guest is a cognitive psychologist that first of all, I'll say specializes in bullshit. Now, people who read me and who kind of follow me know that I dabble a little bit with bullshit, but here we have a pro. I'll hello Shane, and thank you for coming on here, and thank you for giving us your time. And so I just want to kind of say to some of you might know Shane. I'm just gonna kind of read his bio so that you know all the amazing things he has done. And so Shane is a cognitive psychologist and a postdoctoral researcher at Cornell University. He studies how people seek out and evaluate information, form beliefs, and share knowledge with others in political, organizational, and everyday contexts. And, I'm guessing you already can see how this can be really relevant for the things I talk about. And I'm guessing you are also interested in. So he's particularly interested in how misleading information influences people's beliefs, attitudes, and decisions. Though much of his work focuses on how we interact with external information, he also studies how we think and evaluate our own internal thought process, known as metacognition, and we'll talk about that hopefully a little bit more, which includes our ability to recognize and correct thinking errors and other cognitive mishaps. And I also want to say that Shane's work has been covered by major news outlets such as The Guardian and the Forbes and Vice, and I will actually share. I found some of these newspaper articles, so I'll share them with in the follow-up piece after this live for the people who want to check. I think they're great. And more recently, you might have seen on Substack or elsewhere some of his work being covered, some of his work on corporate bullshit. And Shane also writes a Substack called Bullshitology. I mean, I don't know if I said everything correctly. Shane, is that okay?
That's the best intro I've ever gotten. So
Really? Oh, well,
yeah.
I'm glad. You deserve it.
Oh, thank you. Hopefully, the attention that my last paper got will help me on the job hunt later this year because I'm a lowly postdoc. I got to find a faculty job, so I'll be sending out a lot of applications later this year.
I mean, there is, so much bullshit around us. It's surprising that you don't have a position yet.
You're telling me.
There's got to be lots of work for you, no?
Yeah, well, it depends on. I try to not get too political, but our current administration cut all of the federal funding for anything having to do with misinformation research. It's not like they've got something to hide. So it's tough. In response to that, this past year, a lot of schools just didn't hire. Like it was the worst job. Like academically, it was the worst job market in decades, probably. I think that has a lot to do with it. But I have a job right now, so I'm at least for the next year or so, I'm happy to be able to pay the bills as long as I can.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully you find something. And I also want to mention, thank you everybody joining. I can see people are coming in, and also some the housekeeping. If you have questions, I'll try to keep an eye. We might both keep an eye on the questions. I can't guarantee that we will answer all of it because we have a full schedule here. I'm planning to take full advantage of Shane's brain and him picking his brain about all the things that we could be useful for us. But we will try to answer some questions. And also, I want to say that initially, how I kind of came to know about your work is through Substack, which is one of the great features of Substack. Meeting and getting to know other interesting minds who think about interesting things. And my first post that I read was the death of expertise.
Yeah.
Do you know about that one? That's
Yeah,
the
that
first.
that that one got some attention, like, unexpected attention, but, yeah.
And I remember the one of the things that kind of initially caught my attention was you were talking. I think you were talking about the concept of epistemic trespassing,
Mhm.
which is a kind of person talking an expert talking about another area of expertise, and kind of considering that because he's expert, or he or she expert in something, they're expert in everything, right?
Yeah, yeah, they're not really
Relation
staying in their
expertise.
lane.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So, and I remember thinking how even, uh, of course, I'm a therapist, so I'm not a neuroscientist, and I always look up to neuroscientists to kind of find accurate information. But then over time, I noticed that some neuroscientists themselves, especially if they are stars, they will talk about things they have no clue about.
Yeah.
And so that was one little kind of disillusionment for me when it comes to scientists, that even scientists do that. Even scientists do bullshit.
Exactly. Especially when there's money involved, if it can if it pads their bank account somehow, you're gonna hear more bullshit from them.
Really, is it money, not kind of status and I guess engagement or popularity, or is it mostly money, you would say?
I mean, it's just my opinion. The 2 seem to go hand in hand from what I see. Like, there's one researcher right now that, is actually over in the UK, who seems much more interested in becoming famous than doing good work, and so he's already on this path that I talk about in the
You're not
article,
you're
but
not gonna you're not gonna
no, I'm
tell
not
us names.
I'm not gonna name names, but, he did.
UK, and he's neuroscientist. Is it
No,
just give us
he's not a neuroscientist.
okay.
He probably wishes that he was, but, yeah, and he had insulted he actually took a jab at me and my co-authors in a paper that he published, that he and some other people published, and so I just
Really?
haven't yeah, I just haven't liked him since then, but he's very, like, he loves to go on the news and give interviews, and, he's written a book, and, it's whatever. But I think for, like, especially with the people in that article that I picked out, they tend to be the ones who, are in it probably for the attention, but also for the money, because every time they appear, like, on when they're invited as, like, to give the expert opinion, like, here's give the science opinion on this story, here's whatever. They're paid several $1,000s per appearance
Mm.
when they do that.
But it's
And
hard.
they
It's hard even on kind of my small level, when people do sometimes ask me, "Oh, can you comment on this?" Which is much less than people who actually have some expertise and are scientists. It's really difficult. It's you have to kind of have to fight against the hubris, really, to think, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna be intelligent enough to kind of talk about something I have no idea about," and
yeah.
people get disappointed because, like, "Oh, I thought you knew about neuroscience."
Yeah,
Uh, well,
they have a real problem with saying, "I don't know." Like, it's
mm.
almost like anathema to them. It's physically hurts to be able for them to admit, "I don't know," because, like you're saying, somebody might say, "Oh, I thought you were smart." Like, you can be smart. I think it's a sign of intelligence to admit when you don't know something.
And
Um,
so this is really, I mean, before we kind of start properly, this is really interesting. So you saying I don't know is totally okay, and I think the same applies in kind of my area of interest, psychotherapy, mental health. Is everybody who feels that they are a public facing figure in any kind of shape or form, they feel, oh my god, if I don't know the answer, well, then I'm not an expert. It's okay to
yeah,
say I don't know. And actually, I'm gonna mention here a person who was initially in who had the idea for us to meet was actually Mike Kalasa. I don't know if he's watching us. If he's watching, hi Mike. So Mike is a neuroscientist, and he will easily say, "I have no idea how it works," even for things that are quite close to what his expertise in.
mhm,
And that to me is a sign of somebody who actually is very confident, because he knows a lot. So it's okay not to know something.
yeah. It's good to know what you don't know and be able to admit it.
And really, this is all again really a message for everybody. It's okay to not to know for us and as individuals, but also for us as a kind of a collective people who maybe try to use neuroscience or think about neuroscience in psychotherapy. It's okay to say, well, we actually have no clue about many things. That doesn't make that's not that's if that's how things are, it's okay to say it. And so I just want to say, yeah, so hopefully this already gives an idea to everybody, why I can't think of anybody better who could help me shed some light of these reasons that we are so susceptible to fall for for bullshit. Now, I really want to first ask you, Shane, what is bullshit? Can you tell us?
I'll give you my definition because I have my nerdy definition that I use in research, and then so I I'm sometimes worried that my definition of bullshit sounds like bullshit. So I'll try to
Any bullshit
explain
in
it.
one sentence?
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I know a lot of people out there are familiar with Harry Frankfurt's book. We can talk about that if you want, but he had
So
that.
I think knowing that I don't know who is in the audience exactly, but
Sure.
if there will be quite a few therapists, and I don't think we would be necessarily familiar. I'm only familiar with it through you and your writing. So maybe if you could say a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, there was a an analytic philosopher that published a paper back in 1986 called On Bullshit. And it was actually a critique of postmodernism. Not a lot of I think that went over a lot of people's heads, but he lays out like his kind of preliminary theory of what bullshit is, or for him, bullshitting. He said bullshit, but he meant bullshitting. Um, and he introduced this idea that I use in some of my own work that when people are bullshitting, they have sort of it falls short of lying, so they won't come right out and lie. That's why they're bullshitting. But it has a disregard for the truth. So a lot of times when people are bullshitting, they just don't care what they're saying. They're just saying whatever they can to achieve the end goal that they had. So
So
a lot of
just
yeah,
just
yeah,
to,
sure.
to understand is that so it's not lying. There is a distinction. It's a non-truth,
Mhm.
but it's different from
Well,
lying because.
sort of,
Mhm.
sort of. I'll get into it. That's just
Yeah.
how he
Oh, I
had
see.
explained it, and nobody really cared about that paper when it came out. So he republished it like 3 more times and still nobody really cared, but then I somehow, I'm not sure how he got in touch with this book agent, but he was able to publish it as like a little coffee table book, in North America and over in the UK, and it was just this small I actually have the, latest version. It's just a small little coffee table book, and
Nice. That's
they
why
were
I'm
able to
reading.
yeah, they were able to get it. Yeah, it's pretty thin too. Um, through the positioning when he put it in bookstores, it was always next to the register. So he was able to sell a lot of them, and then that kind of at least in the States, that kind of got into, like, the public consciousness. So a lot of people over here have heard of his book, because it came out, then, and that's when people started paying attention to it. So I borrow a little bit from in my definition from what he's written, but also there's other linguists and philosophers who've talked about bullshit. So I'll give you my official definition, and then I'll try to explain it in like normal people talk. Um, so I define bullshit as a type of what I call semantically, logically, or epistemically dubious information that's misleadingly impressive, important, informative, or otherwise engaging some way. So basically, and I'll explain what I mean by both of those because semantically, logically, and epistemically dubious kind of sounds like bullshit. So I'll explain what I mean. So
Good point.
there's basically three different types of sketchiness, I guess you could say, that could qualify as bullshit or that would make information bullshit. So first is semantically dubious. So it's kind of doubtful. It's there's a lot of uncertainty about it semantically. So that means, that refers to information that kind of misrepresents its importance or its relevance or its impressiveness, by using like excessively vague kind of buzzword heavy or jargon heavy language, that lacks substantive meaning. So it's a bunch of flashy words that are said in a way that if you read it and you really deeply consider it, it doesn't actually make a lot of sense. So
So
something
this is
like,
about the meaning. It's about the meaning.
yeah, yeah.
Can
So
you
the
can you
so
give us an example?
yeah, yeah. So something like the synergy between quantum happiness and infrastructural elegance lies in optimizing our soul metrics. That doesn't make any sense. It,
But
but
there
it's
is
got a lot of
more, yeah, so there is buzzwords and
there's
then but yeah.
buzzwords and those buzzwords, and we can talk about this more as we go along too. But those buzzwords for a lot of people, they act like a heuristic cue for intelligence or impressiveness in people. So they don't understand what it's saying, but they see all these
Mm.
words that their brain interprets as impressive. So that's a big word. It sounds smart. That must mean that this is smart, kind of a way. And you'll see this type of bullshit a lot in corporate bullshit is very heavily semantically dubious. You'll see it in a lot of pseudoscience. You know, if it's a very weak claim, they'll often pull out like some sciency sounding words. And in new age stuff, because a lot of this started with research into people like Deepak Chopra and self help gurus that used a lot of fancy, quantum consciousness kind of stuff.
Don't get me
Um,
started. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The next one would be epistemically dubious. So the first one has to do with meaning. That's what semantically means. It has to do with meaning. Epistemically dubious has to do with truth and knowledge and evidence. So if something's epistemically dubious, that means it lacks a reliable or sufficient factual or evidentiary foundation to support it. So it has like something that's epistemically dubious has certain degree of like truthiness to it. It kind of sounds like it might be accurate, but if you dig deeper, you find that it's epistemically hollow, as I would say. So an example of that would be like a pseudoscientific or pseudo like a claim in like health and wellness bullshit that says drinking a glass of celery juice every morning can help fight cancer. It can't. But that sounds like it might be true. And you'll see this again like in pseudoscience and political and bullshit and propaganda and conspiracy theories rely a lot on epistemically dubious claims that sound like they might be true that probably aren't.
And so
Um,
when you say epistemic, it's really kind of when it comes to the knowledge, to the kind of what we know
yeah, yeah,
about things they are. And I can think of many things in kind of neurosciences, psychotherapy intersection where lots of that happens really.
yeah. There's this.
Where
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
also it's the things where we'll say, oh well, limbic system. Obviously, that's the limbic system doing this and that, and that kind of people go, oh yeah, well yeah, it must be that.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It sounds like it has like this patina of truth to it. It sounds like it could be. It's very true. Like Stephen Colbert over here used to say, it's truthiness. Sounds true, but the actual evidence doesn't really support the claim. Um, so then the last one would be logically dubious information, and this means information that lacks like a sound logical structure. So this type of bullshit, it relies on like logical fallacies, inconsistencies in what's been said, or arguments that just don't hold up to like intellectual scrutiny. Um, I have a favorite that I won't go into the actual fallacy, but if anybody wants to, later on Google the "if by whiskey" fallacy. That's my favorite. If you're a nerd like me and you have a favorite fallacy, the "if by whiskey" fallacy is my favorite. The story behind it is just amazing, and it was based on a Mississippi State congressman named Noah Soggy Sweat.
okay.
Anybody
What
with the
was his
name
real name?
Soggy, yeah, anybody with the name Soggy Sweat has an amazing story. But this
Sure.
could be something like, say somebody makes a claim, like, okay, so the NBA finals are going on over here. Somebody could say, oh, well, the New York Knicks lost the other night because I wasn't wearing my lucky socks. And my lucky socks, they help they every time the Knicks win, it's because I'm wearing my lucky socks. That's just logically fallacious. It's based on fallacious reasoning. So you see this a lot in conspiracy theories, again, pseudoscience, especially health and wellness
So
bullshit.
I can
And
straight off the bat see think of very common thing that we hear is, oh well, yeah, this theory has been debunked, but we don't have a better one, so we have to continue using that one. That makes no sense whatsoever.
yeah, that would be a
Well,
perfect example of
this
logically dubious.
theory is not valid. Well, that it's not logical conclusion to continue using it because there is no new one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But somehow it does, it's those kind of statements, while not logical, they do gather support
Mhm.
because how they do can appear in some kind of shortcut of the mind. They can appear as logical, weirdly, right?
Yeah, you perfectly led into the next thing I was gonna say about that. Yeah, that's perfect segue. So all of this together, so I just went through the uh, information that's epistemically dubious or semantically dubious or logically dubious in a way that's misleadingly impressive, informative, important, or otherwise engaging. Basically, the overall effect of of bullshit is that it's what I call functionally misleading. And what I mean by functionally misleading is that it's misleading, like the practical effect that it has, the way that it functions in the real world is that it has this practical effect of misleading a significant portion of its audience, regardless of the intent of the source or the person saying it. And that's the difference. And so one point that I want to make about going back to Frankfurt, because I know some people in your audience may have heard of him and some may
Yeah,
not
sure.
have. The thing that the reason that I disagree with him is he made no distinction between bullshit, like the unit of information, I guess you could call it, and bullshitting like the act. He basically said bullshit is whatever a bullshitter says. And I disagree with that because I think they're two different things. And in my work, I separate them. I have bullshit, the unit of information, and bullshitting the actual strategic thing. So bullshit can spread. And the reason I do this is because bullshit can spread unintentionally. Um, and but still mislead people. So say my mom is on Facebook and sees some post about, you know, I don't know, if you get COVID, it causes if you get COVID, it causes butt cancer, and the only way to combat that is to, wash your hands in coconut oil. I don't know, I'm just making this up. But
Yeah.
my mom, God bless her, she might read something like that on Facebook, and she believes it. For whatever reason, she believes it, and she'll spread it. She might repost it on social media, she might text it to me or my sister because she has a genuine, like, altruistic, motivation. She wants to help people. She wants to protect people. She doesn't want them to get sick. So bullshit can spread, as a unit of information without somebody actually bullshitting. They're just trying to be helpful. But the bullshit itself is, like I said, functionally misleading because regardless of whether my mom is trying to mislead me or not, a large portion of the audience that reads that information, wherever they read it, it's going to mislead them. And then I should probably, since I keep saying it's different from bullshitting, I should probably tell you what bullshitting is.
Yeah.
Because this is what, like, a lot of my work a few years ago was based on. So, bullshitting, and this will sound, again, some people in your audience might be, "That's a really academic way of saying something that we all know what it is," but I have to define things, like, academically in order to measure them. So the way that I
And
say it in
I can just say quickly
yeah, yeah,
for
yeah,
the
sure, sure.
audience and for you, I actually think, given that it's so endemic in what we do, and I actually think we maybe should be equipped with this more formal definition to be able to kind of, when we receive an information, which is all the time,
Mhm,
saying, okay, there is these three types. Which one could it be, or none of them? The semantic, epistemic, and logical. And also, is this just bullshit that's kind of spreading spontaneously, as this hypothetical story with your mom? Or is this somebody intentionally, I'm assuming you're gonna say,
yeah, yeah.
bullshitting me? Yeah. And I think, given that we are inundated with it, maybe we should be equipped with more formal ways of to think about it. So I think it's
Good.
actually good that you tell a definition. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like to cut some of the academicness off of it. So, like, I'm always, like, stressing to students and people in my classes and stuff, if you're a scientist, you still have to talk like a normal person when you when you're communicating it. We might have these formal things that we put in our papers, but when you communicate, to people that aren't nerds living in their ivory towers, at Cornell, you have
Yeah.
to put it in a way that everybody is able to, know what you're saying. So, So for me, bullshitting is the intentional, goal-oriented leveraging of bullshit to manipulate or otherwise mislead others in a way that falls short of lying. So, I have 3 because I love threes. There are 3 types of bullshitting. Um, so I break it up into these 3 main types, and there could be others. These are just the 3 that I've identified. So there's called, what I call persuasive bullshitting. So this is bullshitting that's an attempt to, impress, persuade, or fit in with others, by exaggerating, like the qualities, accomplishments, ideas, or beliefs of yourself or your in group. So this roughly matches the stereotypical definition of what most people consider bullshitting.
So this is
You
what you
just
said, this is to persuade, to kind of act as it's act of persuasion, right?
yeah, yeah,
Is that
well, it's persuasion or what we call impression management. So, persuasion would be trying to convince somebody of a claim, like, this toothpaste is the greatest toothpaste that's ever been made, you know? So that would be persuasion. Impression management is more of a social interaction where I try to manage how your impressions, like how you perceive me. I want you to think like, if I'm on a date or something, I want that person to think that I'm probably funnier than I am or better looking than I am, or maybe that I smell better than I do. I don't know. But, so things that I say, I might exaggerate and embellish what I'm saying to increase their impressions, to manage their impressions of me. Or if I'm like a CEO, for instance, and our company financially is actually doing pretty terribly, in the next shareholder call, I might use some persuasive bullshitting to persuade them to believe that it's doing better than it is. So that's what persuasive bullshitting is. You're trying to change someone's. You're using your words and embellishing and exaggerating to try to create these inflated, better impressions of whatever it is that you're saying.
and so just to make a distinction here, I think what you're
Sure.
describing there, we all do it all the time. Impression management is a human trait, right?
Mhm.
Right.
We don't
I mean,
always bullshit to do it, but yeah.
exactly. So what is the difference between just doing that, being on a date and always wanting to look better? Most of people
Well,
would agree that that's what all people do. Hopefully, I mean, if they really
yeah.
want to
Well. I
see
get
the
it
best
depends on how
in.
much they care. What if they care what other people think, which they, in
Yeah.
some situations they should, but,
The
so
difference with just impression management when it comes, what is then bullshitting when it comes to
yeah.
that? So
So like you were saying, everybody engages in some form of impression management, and it spans so many different areas of our lives. I'll just stick with since, I was talking about the fictional date scenario a second ago. Um, if I get ready for the date, if I like, put the product in my hair so that's, I'm looking or whatever, and I wear like my nicest shirt, which this definitely is not. Well, actually, this might be my nicest shirt because I'm a
you
postdoc.
didn't put your nicest shirt for
Well,
me.
yeah, but
Oh,
we do this all the time. We dress nice. We want to like if you go to work, hopefully dress professionally. We manage impressions just through trying to look our best, and that's not bullshitting. That's just and we want people to think that if we're in a professional setting, we want people to think that we're professional. So we do things that signal professionalism.
yeah,
If
sure.
we're out on a date, we want this person to be attracted to us and think that we're funny or whatever. So we do things to signal like greater attractiveness. That's fine. The bullshitting part comes in when we take it just a little bit to the extreme, and usually it's in the things that we say. Um, if I talk about, I'm a pretty good cook. I spent like 2 decades in the restaurant industry, so I like to think that I cook pretty well. But if I start describing it and I'm really laying it on thick and I'm exaggerating and talking about, my bolognese could totally win awards if I were in Italy, that's when it crosses the line into bullshitting.
So
If
what you're
I
saying is intentionally misleading.
Exactly. Bullshit and bullshitting are always or hey, I can't say bullshit is intentionally misleading. Bullshit is always misleading to a certain part, but bullshitting is always intentional. It's always an attempt to mislead or manipulate what people are thinking.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of defines it well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can't unintentionally bullshit. Which I've actually because when I review papers for different journals, there are a few researchers out there that have tried to define bullshitting as intentional or unintentional. I'm like, you can't unintentionally engage in an intentional act. That doesn't make any sense. So bullshitting is always intentional. Um, so I'll give an example of the next type, and I think a lot of people will also realize this, but it's not a type that a lot of people would probably immediately consider bullshitting, or at least not immediately think about when they think about bullshitting, and that's something that I call evasive bullshitting. This is an attempt to, avoid incurring some sort of reputational, social, or emotional harm to yourself or to somebody else that might result from, giving a direct, truthful answer to some undesirable inquiry. Like, somebody asks you a question that you really don't wanna answer. So what you do is, I jokingly in a paper call this digressive circumlocution because I was trying to use a bullshit term to describe a type of bullshitting, and one of the feedback from one of the reviewers was like, "I really liked the way you describe." I'm like, "I really?" 'Cause digress means to go
He
off
likes
topic.
bullshit.
Yeah, yeah, I think digress means to go off topic, and circumlocution means to walk around. So I was saying that you're answering without answering by walking around the truth. But I did it as a joke, and that reviewer liked it, so whatever. Maybe he had high bullshit receptivity. Um, but basically, yeah, you're answering without answering, and I'll give an example that politicians do this all the time when they're asked a question that if they were to tell the truth, they might lose votes. In some cases, it might incur some sort of legal legal penalties. But I'll give an example because I saw this happen. This is partly where this came from. It's also based on the work of a philosopher named Tom Carson. But when I was a kid, I witnessed this happen. Okay, so Christmas time, we're all at my grandmother's house. In the South, we call grandmother Meemaw, so just bear with me as I call her Meemaw.
Mhm.
So Meemaw gave a sweater to one of my aunts for Christmas, and it was hideous. And my aunt opens it and she pulls it out, and you can just kind of tell on her face that it's just hideous. It's something we all notice. And Meemaw looks at her and asks her like, "Well, do you like it?" You don't wanna answer truthfully in that nobody wants to upset Meemaw. If you people that intentionally upset Meemaw, they burn in hell. That's just what happens to them. You just don't wanna do that. You'll get shunned from the family, excommunicated from all family reunions. You just don't do that. But you know, people who engage in bullshitting, they engage in bullshitting because they don't wanna lie. But I've published research that actually shows that bullshitters find lying less morally acceptable. I'm sorry, yeah, they find lying less morally acceptable than bullshitting. That's why they'll bullshit because it's just kind of a stretch of the truth that falls short of lying. They don't wanna lie. That's why they bullshit. So Meemaw asks my aunt, whether or not she likes the sweater. My aunt looks right at her and is like, "This is so soft. Where did you get this?" And Meemaw's like, "Oh, well, I bought it at whatever." She goes, "Oh, that thank you. This is so thank you so much." She never answered the question, but she gave a response. She kind of avoided it. She went all around it, and she substituted what I call irrelevant truths. So she'll say, "This is so soft. That has nothing to do with the question of whether you like it." "Where did you get this?" "Oh, I shop there all the time." That has nothing to do with the question. But she gives this response, and in the end, Meemaw feels satisfied that she has answered the question and then just moves on.
And everybody's
And
happy. Yeah.
and everybody's happy. You don't have to reveal the truth. You don't have to upset that person. I sometimes call evasive bullshitting the honey, does my butt look big in these pants kind of bullshit. If you answer that, depending on the kind of relationship you have with your partner, if you answer that honestly, you may find yourself sleeping on the couch for the next 3 weeks. Or if they get a new haircut and it's
Yeah, and you can think of
hideous.
many ways, like in at work, for example, if you're talking to your boss and you didn't do something, and you're gonna be in some ways penalized, you might
Yeah.
want to do this form of bullshitting.
Yeah,
Uh,
because you might be if you lied, and that was ever discovered, you would be in even bigger trouble. So instead of lying, you just kind of avoid actually answering, and
Mm.
you make them think that you answer without answering, basically. And this is the most common type of bullshitting that I found in my work. This is far more prevalent than persuasive bullshitting. I know that's hard to believe, but there are a lot of people that engage in this type of bullshitting that try to avoid persuasive bullshitting as much as possible, but they'll do this. And it makes sense why they would, because we're in these social situations all the time. You have to navigate all kinds of different social relationships throughout your
Would you
life.
say that so yeah, I see how that in kind of normal life, day-to-day life, this is a very commonly used strategy by people without even noticing it. Now, if you kind of move from kind of everyday situations to maybe the situation in, social media, it's a different kind of it's a different context, or mental health, or that those kind of discourses. Are we then we're kind of moving from this evasive bullshitting to more trying to convince, right? Persuasive.
Well, I think outside of everyday life, if you look at specific contexts, one, and this is gonna sound like a bullshit answer, but it depends. But depends on the context. So, like, I'll use the corporate context just because it's fresh in my mind from my
Yeah, yeah, sure.
last paper. Um, in the corporate context, both types of bullshit or bullshitting, sorry, both types of bullshitting are very popular, and very, very prevalent. So the persuasive kind, where you're trying to impress your colleagues and your bosses by making them think you're smarter and more skilled than you are. But there's also a certain aspect of not just corporate life, but work life, where evasive bullshitting is used a lot, like, and it can happen in the same conversation, like, somebody can be trying to impress you or persuade you to their side of an issue, and maybe you ask them a question, and then they have to retreat and use evasive bullshitting, so it's the way they navigate through that conversation. But in the workplace, evasive bullshitting happens a lot in things like, performance reviews. And, back from my corporate career, I was involved in a lot of performance review. I fired a lot of people in my old life, um, but those those conversations are really uncomfortable, not just for the person receiving the news, but they're really difficult for the person that has to give the performance review, especially if you have to fire somebody. It's most people don't enjoy that. It's very distressing. So they'll use evasive bullshitting to give feedback, but try to soften it so it doesn't sound as bad as it, and the person often comes away from that conversation thinking that they're doing better than they actually are.
Mm.
They've been misled because the person giving the feedback didn't want to reveal uncomfortable truths. So depending, and in politics, both of them happen. Like, a politician tries to impress you with what they're saying, but they also, when they're asked uncomfortable questions, they'll evasively bullshit to try to get out of those. So depends on the context, but both of them are kind of work in conjunction there.
So now, if we kind of just, I'm just mindful of time, and I
Sure,
really
sure,
want
sure,
to make
sure.
sure that people
Yeah, I
here
I
get.
didn't realize we'd been going this long.
No,
Yeah,
no, no, no,
sorry.
it's fine. I just want to make sure that we kind of talk about things constructively, so that
Yeah,
we, after this conversation, that people who are watching, feel that they're synergetically. Sorry, I'm
yeah,
joking. I'm trying to do some bullshit here. No, that they are equipped at least with some kind of ways to become more savvy about, realizing what's going
yeah,
on.
yeah,
So first, for that, I think we probably need to look a little bit into, what you can tell us about what kind of cognitive mechanisms are at play for us as humans to be, susceptible to bullshit, and whether it's something that we can become better at, or we're just kind of
yeah,
fundamentally flawed in that way.
yeah. Uh, well, I don't know how to tell you this. No, I'm kidding. Well, some of it I hate to say it depends again, but I'll give you some of because there's cognitive and social, reasons why we fall for bullshit. I'll give you some of the cognitive ones, and the first one is, like, really,
This is
uh,
so fascinating. I love this. Anyways,
yeah,
so just
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
go
The
ahead.
first one's really obvious, and I covered some of these in, one of my. I'm not trying to, like, advertise my Substack, but,
Please do advertise, Shane. Please
smash,
do
like, and
tell us.
subscribe.
And
Um,
of course, I will say that in the end. But please
yeah,
tell us which piece
but
you're talking about.
yeah, I had a recent article called brown pilled.
Of course. And I
I
was
forget
gonna
what the
ask
rest of
you
it.
what I was gonna ask you to tell us to everybody who is watching
Oh
what
yeah,
that means
yeah,
to be brown-pilled. What that is.
brown pilled was kind of my tongue in cheek referencing to like being red pilled and blue pilled, which that originally comes from. Well, it originally comes from Alice in Wonderland, but everybody knows it from The Matrix. If you take the red pill, you discover the truth. If you take the blue pill, you remain in the matrix. That's spilled over into political dialogue, at least in the states, where conservatives claim that they have the truth, and it also goes with the color scheme. Like Democrats use blue and conservatives use red over here.
And of
Um,
course, it's also known through manosphere as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they talk about being red pilled and blue pilled. If you're red pilled,
Yes.
you're conservative or you've seen the truth. If you're blue pilled, you're Democrat and you're brainwashed or whatever. So I tried to like kind of riff off that. So I said that well, when you fall for bullshit, that means you've been brown pilled, which might evoke some rather disgusting mental images, but it fits the color scheme of literal bullshit. But for me, brown pill just means that you've either fallen for bullshit, so you can be brown pilled, which means you've fallen for bullshit, or you can brown pill someone else, which means you're trying to get them to fall for bullshit.
And I
Um,
just really quick, I really want to say to the audience, if you get a chance, go and look at that paper. I love that paper, and I think in that kind of little metaphor of brown pill, you really encapsulated lots of things. So I got it straight away as soon as when I saw the picture, with the two hands. I knew what it was, and I was just laughing. And I didn't know whether you invented it or it was something that you kind of heard from somebody else.
no, I came up with it.
So that genius,
I
really. So
Yeah,
please, people,
yeah,
go and have a look at that. And if I'm okay, if you give me the permission, I might sometimes use the verb to be brown-pilled. I love it.
yeah, yeah. Go right ahead. Yeah. No, I checked online. I did a lot of searches, and I asked like 3 different AI chat bots if this were a thing, and one of them actually tried to bullshit me a definition for it, but as far as I know, it didn't exist. But so in that I go through some of the reasons why we fall. Then one of the major ones is intelligence. I know sometimes intelligence is a dirty word these days, but it really is like there's different types of intelligence. There's crystallized intelligence, which is basically all the facts that you know, the facts, experiential memories, the memories you have of things that you've done. That's crystallized intelligence. And then there's fluid intelligence, which I won't go into all of that, but it's basically how quickly you can you can manipulate and think about things in your head and how many different things you can think about at once that has more to do with fluid intelligence. And we found associations with both. Um, for certain types of bullshit, people that are lower in crystallized intelligence, you're more likely to fall for, like, say, the pseudoscience and conspiracy theories. If you're lower in certain types of crystallized intelligence, like you don't know as much about science, or you don't know as much about vaccines or whatever, you're more likely to fall for the types of bullshit that play into that lack of knowledge. There's also the way you think. So analytic thinking plays a large role in this. Some people that we call reflexively open-minded, or as I like to say, so open-minded your brain falls out. There are some people
What is
out.
the being reflexive how do you, is that something from psychology, a
Mhm.
concept, or so how do you call it, reflexive open-mindedness? Is
Yeah, yeah.
that the
There's
thing?
yeah. So there's reflective open-mindedness and there's reflexive open-mindedness.
Also, they're different. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So reflexive open-mindedness is you're open to a wide range of claims, like just about anything you are primed to believe. Um, Uh, and this goes to something you and I discussed earlier, something called truth default theory. So truth default theory, and I talk about this in some of the articles I posted on Substack. There's this idea that when we interact with people, especially for the first time, or if we encounter new information, our default is to just to believe it, to believe that it's true. So if I meet a stranger on the street, they tell me they had pancakes for breakfast. I don't know them, so I have no reason to doubt them. So I'm just going to believe they had pancakes for breakfast. I'm going to believe that their name is Brian. I'm going to believe that they went to, University of, Alabama, whatever. Same thing with new information that, if I see a fact online somewhere and I've never heard of that fact before, like, there's a mushroom that's named after SpongeBob SquarePants. I think there actually is. I'm going to believe that. I'm just going to default to assuming that that's true. And for some people, they don't do that nearly as much as others, but others do it for a while. Like they just believe just about everything. That's
And
being
so yeah,
reflexively
just
open-minded.
again for people who are listening, I just want to underline was a new concept for me, and I think it's really relevant for our work, what we do. So this truth default theory, and some of you might look it up. It's really something I feel we encounter a lot, as in people will make a claim, publish it somewhere on social media, and our default position is, well, it must be true, and then we work from that initial hypothesis. And I think that's something that sometimes we just need to learn to question and
Mhm.
not kind of take any information for face value. And so I think it's a really good concept for us to kind of know and learn from you about. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I
No,
just
no,
want
you're
to
fine. Because that actually leads
this
perfectly
part
into the next
that's
point I was gonna
important.
make,
Mm.
which was something we discussed earlier, which was expert and authority. So we're more likely to believe things that, come from some perceived expert, and I say perceived because different groups, especially, different ideological groups, have different people that they consider, experts. Like, there are some people in certain spheres that have their experts that I just think are complete morons and are not experts, but whoever you perceive as an expert or an authority, you're more likely to believe what they say. And I published, with some co-authors of mine a couple of years ago, we published a paper that actually tried to dig in. This is also related to the reflexively open-minded point, and analytic thinking. The idea, going back to the reflexive open-minded, the idea is that if they just engage in more critical thinking, more what we call reflective thinking, if they just do that, then they're less likely to fall for bullshit. Like if you're just a more skeptical, critically minded person, that you're less likely to fall for bullshit. That's a little bit true, but not necessarily. Because what we found is bullshit, especially certain types of bullshit, if you don't know much about it, this goes back to the crystallized intelligence. If it's bullshit in an area you don't know much about, engaging in more critical, skeptical, analytic thinking will not do anything for you because you don't have the knowledge base to even know that that's bullshit. So thinking more about it and more critically will not talk you out of it. This is especially true if bullshit comes from an expert because we often have this heuristic, like this little mental rule in our head that just automatically fires. We hear something from an expert, we believe it because they're an expert. Why would they lie to us? Truth default theory. Obviously, they're telling us the truth. And what we found was even when bullshit comes from an expert and we get people to critically engage with it and reflect on it and write out their reasons for why it may or may not be true, it still doesn't really affect whether or not people believe it. They still, if they've fallen for the bullshit, reflecting from an expert, reflecting more on it, they still believe it. So even analytic critical thinking doesn't help in some circumstances. Um,
So it's really interesting. So if even once you kind of fall for it and you buy into it, even if you do start thinking about it, reflecting about it, you'll still kind of find a way to have a confirmation bias, essentially.
yeah, in some situations, especially if it's something that you just don't really know much about. Um, and
And
that
in
gets
this,
to
so sorry.
No, no, go ahead. I was just gonna say that gets us into, another thing because I know that, one of your questions earlier was about, like, specific biases that we fall
Yeah.
victim to. Um, so there are other social reasons. I'll just quickly touch on that, and then I wanna switch into that topic because it's really interesting. So there are other social reasons we might fall for bullshit. Like, if you're at work and you're in an environment that kind of is saturated by bullshit and kind of just structurally encourages going along with the bullshit. Like, sometimes if you're at work, you have to go along with bullshit to keep your job.
This is really
Um,
interesting. So some structures and environments can structurally encourage going along
yes,
with the bullshit. And
and
I just encourage everybody
yep,
to replace corporate with some other things that we know. So when we are in some places, there's gonna be incentive, all sorts of incentives, right? To
mhm,
just stay with it.
and this is related to something that we call the media ecosystem. Just the types of information that you surround yourself with, the types of informational environments that you open yourself up to can shape what you believe. So this could be in the workplace, this could be the types of social media that you follow, this could be, like, stuff that you're watching on YouTube. The stuff that you allow into your brain
Yeah.
is going to shape what you believe whether you want it to or not. 'Cause this feeds into, the some of the cognitive, like, the biases in this. So, a lot of people have may be familiar with confirmation bias, and when that get
Yeah, and hopefully people know. Maybe say whatever you want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. So there's confirmation bias. Something that's not discussed a lot with that is the opposite side of that coin, which is called disconfirmation bias. So just to define what those 2 things are,
Yeah.
is most of us have this automatic preference for information that agrees with us, things that we already believe. It's confirmation bias is sort of like an information filter. So we allow information in that agrees with things we already believe. So we'll seek out information and that already agrees with us. Disconfirmation bias is like the hater's gonna hate bias. What that is instead of preferentially um, or having a preference for information that agrees with us, we preferentially reject information that disagrees with us. So let's say I have some prior belief about whatever. It could be vaccines, it could be something political, it could be whatever. If if I hear information that agrees with that, that supports my belief, I'm gonna say that's credible. I like that information. I like that source. It confirms
Yeah.
what I
There you
believe.
go. There you go. I knew it.
Exactly. If I hear information that conflicts with some belief I have, my automatic for the disconfirmation, and not just me, but like everybody, my automatic bias is switches to disconfirmation bias, where I'm like, that can't be true. I'm gonna look up all the reasons why that's not true. I don't try to look up reasons why it might be true. It disagrees with me, so I look up all the reasons why it's not true. And I ignore everything that might support it, and I only filter into my brain hole stuff that disconfirms it.
So
So,
basically, this is really important. So there's these two biases that all kind of support the same
they
thing,
always work together, right?
and they are really they are. So basically, we are more critical to the content we disagree with,
Right.
and we are uncritical, acritical. I don't know how to say, to the content we, and so basically that creates just the bubble of things that we.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, confirmation bias is a preference to accept stuff that agrees with us. Disconfirmation bias is a preference to reject stuff that disagrees with us.
Mm.
So that's one thing that plays into our bullshit receptivity. Another one is something called motivated reasoning, and this is just what I don't really like that term because I think it gets misinterpreted a lot. People think that it means, oh, I have a belief and I'm going to do whatever I can to reason in a way that gets me to that belief. That's not necessarily what it is. I like to call it directionally biased reasoning because prior beliefs and it's not just prior beliefs, but we have these biases that act sort of cognitively. They sort of have like a gravitational pull. So let's say I have a prior belief. When I hear information that disagrees with it, the way that I reason about this new information, this goes back to the disconfirmation bias, but whatever reasoning I engage in, kind of I'm gravitationally pulled in that reasoning towards that prior belief. If I have a social group or an ideological group or a political group that I identify with, like I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican or I'm part of Labor or I identify with whatever party or even a sports
Or
team.
I'm or I'm in this therapy school against this one, or I believe it. Yeah, it
Exactly.
applies to everything.
If I hear information that about that, I'm gonna reason about that information, whether it's to accept or reject the information. However, whatever the information is, I'm gonna reason in a way that the cognitive gravitational pull keeps me close to holding on to that belief or that ideology or supporting that group. So that's basically what motivated reasoning is. It's the
So
way I
is
explain it to
motivated
people. It's
reasoning similar or related to motivated cognition?
it's the same thing.
Oh, it's the same thing because I was
Yeah,
really interesting, and I'm actually thinking writing a piece about neuroscience of motivated cognition. Some people
yeah,
work on that. To throw a bit of a buzzword here to
yeah,
impress everybody. But
yeah,
I find it so fascinating how kind of it's kind of keeping the in-group bias and keeping the kind of the peace within the group and
yeah.
not having conflicts within groups. And so you can see a clear evolutionary reason for that, right?
Right,
In
right.
some
Because
ways.
that was, way back in our earlier primate days, like, the things everything was about survival. So, adhering to the group increased survival. Doing what the group does increased survival. Because if we stick together, we can fight off we can gather more food, we can fight off more predators. Sticking with the group is what led to survival in the past, and cognitively, we still kinda do that. Um, there's another one that's related. There are two more that I want to talk about that are
Yeah.
related to this. One is called the illusion of understanding. It's also sometimes called the illusion of explanatory depth. This is research that was started by people like Steve Sloman and Philip Fernbach. Philip was actually on my dissertation committee, but this is the basic gist of this is we are epistemically overconfident. In other words, we think we know more than we actually do. And this is related to another thing that's called the community of knowledge. So basically, if if we know something, and the media does this a lot, they'll say like, if scientists have discovered something, the media will report it as, well, we know that Pluto is not a planet. Well, we know now that smoking causes cancer or whatever. No, you don't know that. Some scientists at a university thousands of miles away know that. You just read about it and reported about it.
I'm guilty of
That
that.
always irritates me when they say,
I
"We know."
know, I'm
Yeah,
guilty of
you don't
that. I'm
know.
gonna stop using that. I'm gonna stop using that. Sometimes I do say we know. Well, I don't know. I haven't
Yeah,
done
yeah.
those experiments. So I'm
I
gonna stop
I'll
using.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always try, and I'll catch myself sometimes I do that, and I'll always try to say like, "Well, research has shown." I won't say we know, but that type of attitude, that type of epistemic overconfidence, creates in a lot of us. It's related to this illusion of understanding. We think we understand things more than we know, more than we actually do, and this overconfidence in what we actually know can leads to mistakes in our reasoning where we make assumptions about knowledge that cause us to fall for bullshit. And one of the ways that we test this in research is we ask people like, "Hey, how well do you understand how a helicopter works on a scale of 1 to 10?" And they might say, "Oh, I pretty well. I'd say like an 8." Then we ask them, "Okay, explain in as much detail as possible exactly how a helicopter works." Uh, and they'll be like, I don't know, it does this and goes up." And then we'll ask them,
Is this Dunning-Kruger effect? Is that
"No,
related to
no,
that?
no," but I'll touch on that.
Yes, yeah.
So we ask them to explain in as much detail as possible, and then after they explain, we ask them, "Okay, how much do you understand how a helicopter works?" And they'll say, "Okay, maybe only a 2." But we
Mm,
don't realize that we don't understand a lot of stuff until we're confronted with that. We just assume that we do, because we all know that Pluto's not a planet, that kind of stuff. This illusion of community knowledge. We think that
yeah.
means somebody else knows something, therefore we assume that we know it too. But this overconfidence that we have in our own knowledge leads us to fall for a lot of bullshit. And that goes perfectly into Dunning-Kruger, because Dunning-Kruger is one of I'm actually writing an article right now about words that people always misuse online, and two of my biggest pet peeves are Dunning-Kruger and cognitive dissonance. Um, but
Please tell us
Dunning-Kruger,
about it.
sure,
Please
sure.
school me on that. I'm probably one of the guilty ones to do
It's
that.
okay. So the Dunning-Kruger effect, all it is saying. So most people hear about the and when the funny thing is 9 times out of 10 when people discuss the Dunning-Kruger effect, they actually don't know what they're talking about. So they're illustrating the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect, basically, the gist of it is that people who are the least knowledgeable or the least skilled, what we would call the least competent, but that kind of has negative connotations, but basically the least competent in something, are disproportionately confident in their ability. It does not mean that the dumbest people are more confident than the smartest people, or the least skilled people are more confident than the most skilled. It doesn't mean that at all. Everybody, when we study this in the lab, everybody, their confidence across a whole range of different tasks is roughly the same. Like if you were to plot confidence from 0 to 100, most people's confidence in most tasks hovers in the 65 to 70 range. Doesn't matter where you are. If you're really bad at it, if you're kind of bad at it, if you're kind of good at it, if you're an expert, everybody's confidence is around this like 70-ish percent range. The Dunning-Kruger effect just shows that the people that are the worst at it, that know the least or are the least skilled, they still have that 70%-ish confidence. Sorry, I'm messing up my my
Yeah.
focus here, but their performance is down here. So their confidence to performance gap is big. It is the largest of everybody. That doesn't mean they're more confident than anyone else. They're just as confident. They just
But
suck
what
worse.
is that, the famous graph? The famous graph of Dunning-Kruger effect?
Yeah, it's wrong. Like
Wrong.
that says like
I have
there's
it
this
one of my thesis, I have to
and
check that.
yeah, and it's got this curve and like it
Yes,
says like
and there is the valley of
the
despair, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually attended a talk by David Dunning at University of Waterloo when I was working on my PhD. He came and gave a talk to us, and he talked about that graph because it's wrong. Somebody just came up with it, and he thought it
So
was the
it's not
most
his
iro
graph.
yeah, no, it's not his graph.
Oh my god.
Hi
Okay.
the actual Dunning-Kruger graph, I wish I had a way to show it to you, but the actual Dunning-Kruger graph is is 2 lines. Well, just my it's 2 lines. One goes like this and one goes like this. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect. This whole thing with the curves is not. And he ranted in the talk for just like 5 minutes on how stupid that graph was, and he doesn't know where it came from and why everybody, he understands why people believe it, but it's funny to him because it has nothing to do with the
But
Dunning-Kruger effect.
I think the kind of this Dunning-Kruger effect, how it's used on social media, I think it describes more what you were talking maybe before, which is the illusion of understanding.
Exactly. That's how they're related is when topics that we know the least about, we're disproportionately confident in our knowledge about it. That doesn't mean that we're more confident than the experts. That just means the gap between our actual understanding and our confidence is just larger. And this, again, this type of overconfidence, this can lead, to us falling for bullshit. But one point that I want to make real quick about the Dunning-Kruger effect is we all fall victim to it. Every time you start something new, every time, like it could be a new task, it could be you're learning a new subject, it could be you're shooting a basketball for the first time in your life. Everybody who starts out and they suck at something originally, which we all almost all start out a new task and we suck at it, our confidence is always disproportionate. So we all fall victim to this. So it annoys me online because people use it as some sort of pejorative to insult people, like, "Oh, this is the thing. Stupid people are too stupid to know that they're stupid." Like, well, you're stupid because we're all stupid, and there are a wide range of topics or tasks or behaviors that we all suck at. So we're all stupid to a certain
It's
degree,
a kind of a
and
fundamental trait of human kind of psychology where your confidence is higher than what is your kind of
yeah.
performance is.
But we all experience the Dunning-Kruger effect. So that's what there's no us versus them because it happens to all of us. And the other thing, since I'm on that, and related to that is something called the bias blind spot. For bullshit specifically, I have a paper where I describe the bullshit blind spot, and this
Uh,
is, and I'll do it for bullshit specifically. So the bias blind spot is the belief that we're not as biased, or that people are more biased than we are, and it's always a wrong belief. The bullshit blind spot, specifically, since we're talking about bullshit here, is that people who are more likely to fall for bullshit, they think they're better at detecting bullshit than they are, and they think that they're better at detecting it than everybody else. So
Sorry,
people who are
can you just say this again? People who
yeah,
are
people who are more likely to fall for bullshit, not only do they think they're actually really good at detecting it, So they don't even realize that they've fallen for it. They think that they're better than most other people at detecting it. So it's
Oh
kind
my
of like
god,
a
I guess we
double.
fall into bullshit all the time. I think for myself, I'm really good in detecting bullshit, so probably.
Everybody does. See, and that's, to talk about another Substack article I wrote, that's related to something called the toupee fallacy. And just really quickly, the toupee fallacy is the belief that toupees, or that you're it's the mistaken belief that you're really good at spotting toupees, because every time you spot a toupee, it's bad. But that just means that you've missed all the really good toupees. Like, most toupees, especially these days, are really, really good. This is not a toupee, by the way. I have a little thinning spot up here. So this is definitely not a toupee. But that happens with bullshit too. I hear from so many people, "Oh, I've got a great bullshit detector." No. Or, "I can always spot a bullshitter." No, you can't. You can always spot a bad bullshitter. The people that are really good at it, or the really convincing bullshit, sails right by all of your filters all the
Mm.
time. And that's sort of the bullshit version of the toupee fallacy. We think that we're good at seeing something because we only remember when we saw bad examples of it, but all the good examples of it fly right past us.
Yeah, I
Um,
understand. And so I'm just mindful of time because I really
yeah,
want to
yeah, yeah.
finish soon because people are gonna start dropping off. It's more than an hour. But really quickly, I just want to underline something that's really interesting here is that
Sure.
when we say cognitive biases, we always think biases in thinking, but really what you're saying is that social and sociality is really part of it. And some of the
Well,
biases we have will be to do with social environment and wanting to stay in the group and respected, loved, accepted by the
exactly.
group.
When it comes to falling for misinformation or bullshit, that cognitive biases are cognitive, but when it comes to falling for misinformation, there are so many other factors in play. There's certainly cognitive biases. I think those are probably the most foundational, but there are also social pressures and
Mm.
environmental things that affect the extent that we fall for it.
And so really quickly, if you could just give us one or two, pieces of advice,
Okay.
what would would be easy to implement for, somebody who is really, not specialist in this and, who is wants to become better in really separating what of the information they receive, whether it's mental health space or otherwise, could be genuine and useful or what's bullshit. Is there
Sure.
something we can do?
Yeah. There are a few things. The first that I always tell people, and I tell my students this too: be skeptical of everything, but be skeptical of any claim or person when it concerns your health, your money, or your vote. Because those three things are incredibly important. And those three things, at least in my opinion, tend to be where bullshit abounds. Like, there's all kinds of health and wellness bullshit out there. There's all kinds of financial bullshit where people are trying to get your money. And there's all kinds of bullshit coming from politicians trying to get your vote. So, first of all, just as a general rule, be skeptical when any of those three things are involved in some sort of claim. Um, second is, if you encounter a claim that sounds really impressive, but you're not sure what it says, try to force the person saying it to put it into plain language. Like, this
Yeah.
takes place at the workplace, or if you're at a conference, or if you're listening to somebody speak, or somebody's telling you a story, and they're saying stuff that doesn't quite make sense. Ask follow up questions. Say, "I don't quite understand what you mean by this. Can you put that in easier terms?" um, to force that, because one of the things that makes us fall for bullshit is we mistake fluency for meaning. So I think you should and this is really you should be skeptical of anything that seems easy to believe. Anything claim that agrees with you, something that you want to believe, is the type of thing that you should question the hardest. Because people often they'll mistake, like, the ease of processing. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Oh, I feel that feels right to me, so I'm going to believe it. Anytime that just means that's ease of processing. That's what we call processing fluency. We mistake that for truth a lot, and we mistake that for depth. So anything that we want to believe, or sounds really convincing, are the types of things that we should always step back and be like, let me just confirm. Let me make sure. And related to that is, when you're trying to confirm, you shouldn't just believe. the source that it comes from. You shouldn't just stay on that source. You should do what we call lateral reading, which is where you break away from the source of the claim and you try to find what other sources or other reliable sources have said about it. Do these other reliable sources also support the claim coming from, if if this news station, if Fox News or MSNBC or CNN or BBC is making a claim about something, or somebody that's on, BBC is making a claim about something, that's fine. But what do other sources that aren't the BBC or aren't CNN or aren't Fox News, do they confirm it as well? That old,
And
go
I
back to the
think
old,
that really, transpose that the news or political news to something that, we are hear, or theories that we hear, or neuroscience claims that we hear. And always, I think these two takeaways really, we as a community, we, ought to kind of embrace more. One is critical, kind of normalizing asking questions and not always agreeing, oh, that makes sense, which is very, very common in therapy. I think if we have a prominent figure telling us something, so asking a question and that not being considered as a offensive, or
yeah.
something that's creating a problem. And also lateral reading, the expression I didn't know, that I will use, and which is kind of find other sources. What do they say? Independent sources from the source you're reading. And so, I mean, we could talk much more. I actually had literally, 5, 6 more questions, but we're gonna have to stop here.
That'll be episode 2.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna take you up on that. So everybody heard it, folks. He said it. I didn't say. And so I really want to thank you. This was fascinating. I'm gonna go and kind of look. I was making my little notes here and look things up. What I'm gonna do, I will write a little summary of our conversation and publish this on Substack with the video, so for everybody to be able to kind of go through the so the main things we said. Also, please, I will add also the links to Shane's academic papers, and also some of the kind of more broad general public papers. Please all go to Shane's Substack, Bullshitology, subscribe, follow what he's doing. And people like this can really help us become more kind of savvy in finding out what's what. And thank you so much for being here, and thank you everybody for joining us. And thank you for your time. And I'm waiting for that second part. Everybody will be waiting
Yeah.
now.
Thanks.
Thank
I had
you
a I
so
had a great
much.
time. This was really
Yeah,
fun.
thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye everybody. Thank you for joining us.